Happy Wednesday, Poetry Wednesday to be precise. I'm going to start today with one of my favorite books. This is The Making of a Poem by Mark Strand and Evan Boland. I've read a number of things from there, and I'm going to read just a few before I share with you a discovery, incredible discovery. Let's start on the uptick. Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Now, that's a happy poem. I'm going to resurrect myself with a little bit of love poetry. It's spring. What can I tell you? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? By William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal limes to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long as lives this and this gives life to thee. And in that happier vein, a little later in the timeline, Elizabeth Barrett Browning from Sonnets from the Portuguese. Oh, how do I love thee? Well, let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach, when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely, as men strive for right. I love thee purely, as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. And now, from somebody we have heard from before, Mary Oliver, The Black Walnut Tree. You know, my mother and I debate. We could sell the black walnut tree to the lumberman and pay off the mortgage. Likely some storm anyway will churn down its dark boughs, smashing the house. We talk slowly. Two women trying in a difficult time to be wise. Roots in the cellar drains, I say, and she replies that the leaves are getting heavier every year and the fruit is harder to gather. But something brighter than money moves in our blood, an edge sharp and quick as a trowel that wants us to dig and sow. So we talk, but we don't do anything. That night, I dream of my fathers out of Bohemia, filling the blue fields of fresh and generous Ohio with leaves and vines and orchards. What my mother and I both know is that we'd crawl with shame in the emptiness we'd made in our own and our father's backyard. So, the black walnut tree swings through another year of sun and leaping winds of leaves and bounding fruit, and month after month, the whip crack of the mortgage. Now, a book that Dirsha led me to that I think is truly a treasure. A Child's Introduction to Poetry, Michael Driscoll, illustrated by Meredith Hamilton. Now, when you get this book, it's not going to have my little notes attached, but it is an extraordinary volume because suppose you have children or grandchildren that you want to introduce to poetry. Here is the place with which to do it. I remember, actually, I was introduced by poetry upon my mother's lap. She read to me poems that had a vocabulary that I had no idea what she was talking about. Years later, I discovered, but first, it was the music to my ears that I heard. Then it was the closeness to her and listening and interacting. Poetry was a way to relate to people. And now here is this wondrous book. Suppose you're thinking, oh, Ron, I don't read well. And by the way, I don't agree with that sentiment, because as long as you've got a voice and vocal cords, you read appropriately and have the skill set necessary to read poetry magnificently. Just read it with heart. But let's back away from that. Suppose you're really serious and you don't want to share your voice with the children. Guess what? Now, I won't hone in on it and show you where because it's in the book, but there's a website where you can go and download over 95 tracks. And this book tells you what track relates numerically to the poem that's being discussed. It is extraordinary. Then, apart from how pretty the book itself is, and again, I don't want to take this out because I don't want to destroy the book. There is a poster that's of a book that of a poem that we read, Jabberwocky. Now this literally can be torn out and put on a bulletin board, on a wall, and it's wonderfully illustrated. And now, I'm going to read a poem from this. And guess what? I alluded to the fact that there were words I didn't understand when my mother read to me. Well, you'll never guess what my favorite color is. Purple? Well, in this book, this sensitive, creative writer has highlighted strange words in purple. And if there's a word that probably needs some definition, in the poem I'm going to read, there's a section with each of the poems, words for the wise. Those words that have been highlighted are defined here. And the child can read it. You can read it to your child, however you choose to communicate it. And I probably shouldn't say this, but since I don't have an inner adult to tell me what I should say and shouldn't say, I watched something on television that was a sci-fi show on Netflix called Altered Carbon. Guess what? One of the characters was named Poe. And it just so happens I'm going to read a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. His hotel was called The Raven. And so there's a place where I had no way of knowing, oops, I went out of the frame, no way of knowing that all of this would come to roost in this one poem. This probably is the poem that Edgar Allan Poe is most known for. And it goes. Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only words there were spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" Then I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mane of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door, take the beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. And now, first session that I did was reading some of Robert Frost's poems, and one of the poems I read was The Road Not Taken. You'll probably remember it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by. This book, in its utter brilliance, takes that poem, and I'm hoping you can see the illustration. There's a building in New York called a Flatiron Building, and this is true. It literally is triangular shaped. To the left of it's a road, to the right of it's a road. And you can't go straight ahead or you're going to get a concussion. You have to make a choice. And this particular poem and illustration shows that you don't need a yellow wood. You can have a triangular shaped building. Two roads, anywhere, they give you a choice. And I do encourage you to reacquaint yourself with that poem. Just a couple light things here. Limericks. Now, you can relax, censors in our midst. I'm not going to read the limericks that I'd like to read necessarily, because they're a little blue. These are for children, but you'll see what a fun thing this can be. There was a young lady from Niger who smiled as she rode on a tiger. They returned from the ride with the lady inside, and a smile on the face of the tiger. There was an old man of Madrid who was hit with a brick by a kid. Said the man, "Oh, what joy to wallop that boy! Be darned if I don't." And he did. That was written by Gillette Burgess. Oh, and Edward Lear, truly a master, wrote, "There was an old man with a beard who said, 'Oh, it's just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nests in my beard.'" And in conclusion, yet another one of that legion of things that exists under the title of my favorites. This is If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, oh, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves, and make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, not lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And now we've got Friday to look forward to, and some special treats lie ahead. Thank you for coming in and sharing Wednesday poetry with me. Have a good rest of the day.